Okay, we're going to work pathways 5.8 from the end of the chapter. Again, this is on gas pressure, some introductory problems to gas pressure. We're asked to convert between pressure units. There are many different pressure units that are outlined in your book, and this is a skill that will be important for you. You could face a problem where you just need to convert pressure units on the exam. That would be a pretty easy problem. Another place that you might need to use this is when you're working problems on the exam or in the homework. You might be given a pressure in one unit, and you may need to convert prior to using, ideal gas law, Boyle's law, or whatever. And then you need to convert first before you can get the answer. Okay, so we need to master this skill. It's just a unit conversion essentially, but I included this problem because you might be a little bit unfamiliar with the units, and as a consequence, it might be useful to take a look at this. Okay, so the first problem asks us to convert 0.745 atmospheres into millimeters of mercury. Okay, and as we would with any unit conversion, we start with what we know. We multiply by a conversion factor that gets us to what we want. Here that's going to be millimeters of Hg. Okay, so we're going from atmospheres to millimeters Hg for mercury. We need a conversion factor. Undesirable units in the denominator such that they cancel. Desirable units in the numerator. Okay, so here's where we need to know the conversion factor. Your book outlines these. I think they're given on the exam, okay? But as you get familiar with this more and more, it won't be too hard for you to remember that there are 760 millimeters of mercury in one atmosphere, okay? It turns out that 1 atm is equal to 760 millimeters of mercury. That's also equal to 760 torr. Sometimes you hear this torr unit. It's essentially equivalent to millimeters of mercury. So these are kind of interchangeable, basically, okay? But that's a very common conversion factor for this pressure chapter that you'll probably see quite a bit, okay? So if we do the conversion, we get rid of the atmosphere units, and we end up getting 566.2 millimeters of mercury on our calculator, okay? Now what about Sig Figs? What should we do about that? It turns out that these conversion factors that we're going to use are more or less considered exact, okay? So they never limit number of Sig Figs. So you might say, oh, there's 2 Sig Figs, but that's not the case here because we consider this an exact number, okay? With essentially infinite number of Sig Figs. So we're going to be governed or limited by how many Sig Figs we had in the original number, and here that's 3. Okay, so what I'd like to do is round to 566, and that'll be my final answer here, okay? It's consistent with my Sig Fig rules. All right, so let's try our hand at another one of these. It looks like the next one that we're given, we're told that we've got 992 torr of pressure, and we want to go to bar. Pressure unit called bar. Okay, how do we do this? Well, it turns out a bar is pretty close to an atmosphere, although it's a little bit different. And there is a conversion factor that we'll need to know, okay? But if I was approached with this problem, for my conversions, I tend to like to go through atmospheres a lot. If I have torrs or millimeters of mercury, remember those two are equivalent, I tend to go to atmosphere, okay? So I'm going to say that 1 atmosphere physically equivalent to 760 torr. So I can get rid of my torr units, and if I do that math, I'm into atmospheres. It looks like it would be a little over an atmosphere, right? But I want my answer in bar, so I need to convert to that unit. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to convert away from atmosphere and into bar by using a second conversion factor. So I'm going through atmospheres and intermediate, which is a common thing to do. One reason why you might want to do this is your book actually has a bunch of conversion factors listed in it, all of which are physically equivalent to 1 atmosphere. So it makes it a kind of a convenient unit to work through, okay? But it turns out that for every 1 atmosphere, it's a little over 1 bar. It's 1.01325. So these two are pretty close to the same, but they're not exactly different. Okay, a bar is a little bit bigger. Okay, but if you do the work on your calculator, you get 1.3225 bar as your answer. Now again, I'm going to want to pay attention to Sig Figs, my conversion factors, so they don't limit me. Here I've got plenty of Sig Figs. So 3 is what I'm limited by, this original number 992. And it looks like probably what I should do is round off right there and just say 1.32 bar, okay? So simple enough. This is not too bad. You just got to get a little bit familiar with these units of measure. And then you're good to go. So part C gives us a pressure in kilopascals. Specifically, it says there's 365 kilopascals. We are to convert into atmospheres, okay? So we start with what we know, 365 kPa, that's kilopascals, thousands of pascals. And the other pressure units, so we have millimeters of mercury, torr, bar. We saw that before, now we're in this pascals or kilopascals unit, okay? It just so happens that the conversion factor here, which is also listed in your book, is 1 atmosphere is physically equivalent to 101.325 kilopascals. Not the same as this pascals. They're 2 different units, right? The kilo is the metric prefix here, okay? If you do the math on that, you get rid of the kPa units, convert to atmospheres, and we find that the answer is 3.602 if we do the math on our calculator. Now again, thinking about Sig Figs, we have to decide what to do. Looks like there's 3 here, so I'll probably round this down to a 0 and leave that 0 there. It's to the right of a non-zero number and a decimal point, so we'll consider that significant, and it's 3.6 atmospheres, okay? I've got one more to do here, so I'm going to erase up here at the top. We'll work part D. Hopefully you see where we're coming from for this. You can just practice it just a little bit because, again, it's not uncommon to have to change units of pressure, and it's not terribly difficult. And you never really want this to be sort of your rate limiting process or rate limiting step, right, when you're answering problems, because you want to get the right answer, and you don't want something like this tripping you up, right? All right, so in this one we have 804 millimeters of mercury pressure. We want to convert to kilopascals. How in the world are we going to do this? Okay, we start with what we know. And again, I usually like to proceed through atmosphere units if I have to, okay? And I know from experience that 1 atmosphere physically equivalent to 760 millimeters of mercury. So my millimeters of mercury units cancel out when I do the division, 804 divided by 760. But if I stop there, I would have atmosphere units. I'd be a little over an atmosphere. But I don't want atmosphere units, I want kilopascal units. Well, fortunately, in that last problem, and if we need to, we can look up in the book what an atmosphere is physically equivalent to. So these two will be canceled. And it turns out again that 101.325 kilopascal is physically equivalent to 1 atmosphere. And as a result, I crunch the numbers on my calculator, I get 107.191 kilopascals. Now again, I want to think about significant figures here, so I'm not completely done. I had 3 to begin with. I should probably have 3 in the end. So I erased all my decimal digits, and I've got 107 kilopascals. And I'm all finished.